Right now on the National Weather Desk, 1 year later, looking back on the devastating floods that submerged Yellowstone National Park.
This kind of came out of nowhere. I had no idea what was going to happen.
Summer outlook. What kind of weather can we all expect to see this season?
Below normal precipitation in the northwest and parts of the southwest, above normal in the mid-south and parts of the east coast.
Heavenly answer? Could the solution to building hurricane-resistant buildings be found in church?
They'll have water damage, but they'll not have any structural damage.
Exploring Venus. Why traveling to our planetary neighbor is so difficult.
Does Venus have weather?
Absolutely. So it's got clouds, it's got winds.
And a bear goes swimming at the beach. Do we need to say anything else?
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
And a very good morning. Welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Brian Vandegraff. Well, nearly 1 year ago, parts of Montana were ravaged by floodwaters following intense rainfall. The torrents of water washed away bridges and roads, isolating some communities. And some people had to salvage what was left behind after the destructive flooding from the Yellowstone River. Jonathan May caught up with locals to bring you their stories.
This kind of came out of nowhere. I had no idea what was going to happen.
It caught people by surprise when they saw how high the Yellowstone River was nearly 1 year ago. And with the floodwaters came the chaos that followed it.
We were standing in water right now. I mean, there was water over the highway.
Vehicles were trapped in the water, and homes like this in Livingston flooded.
Got evacuated at about 10 o'clock in the morning and then, spent the night in the car for the night. Roughed it out a little bit.
When people started to pick up the pieces days later, they knew then it'd be a long rebuild.
We'll see what the future holds. I mean, we're just kind of getting started, so I'm sure the list is going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Reflecting on the floodwaters 1 year ago, the Livingston Chamber of Commerce says it was an all-out effort to get people to safety.
What was the community-wide effort kind of to chip in and help neighbor during that week?
You started to see nonprofits kind of in local churches and other organizations come together and start to form other groups that were helping, whether it was cleaning out houses and beyond.
And while community members say the aftermath of the floods can be still felt in Park County, help from FEMA, HRDC, the Red Cross, and the Park County Community Foundation helped everyone get back on their feet.
So it's made a very seamless kind of graduation to where we are today. We're not 100%. We will be, I'm hoping, somewhere through this mid-season where people realize that they can get into the park at the north entrance, and the park is, and all those animals are waiting for them not to be petted.
Communities in Park County are still rebounding from the devastation, but their message to the public remains clear. They want visitors to come back and are ready for them this summer.
Well, severe thunderstorms rolled through portions of the South last night, and they brought a lot of lightning to the region, especially around northern Alabama. One viewer sent James Spann this great shot of some spider lightning going across the sky at about 50 miles northwest of Birmingham. Severe storms also swept through Texas, dropping very large hail near Dallas. There's enhanced risk of more storms today in central Texas, with a wider threat across portions of the South. Tens of thousands of people in both states are still without power this morning. Winter was really wet and snowy in parts of the country. Spring was abnormally dry in other places. So what's the rain and temperature outlook for the summer? Theron Zahn has the latest.
The latest forecast map shows the areas of the west where we expect some shower activity. Heavy showers expected in parts of Nevada, and the rumble of thunder may be heard around the Denver area as showers move through the Rocky Mountain states, stretching as far south as Oklahoma and parts of Texas. But what comes next? What you're looking at here is the seasonal precipitation outlook put out by the National Weather Service. This covers June, July, and August, and you can see they expect below normal precipitation in the northwest and parts of the southwest, above normal in the mid-south and parts of the east coast. But what about temperatures? The seasonal temperature outlook calls for above normal temperatures for pretty much the entire west, especially in the southwest. Also, the east coast is expecting above normal temperatures over the next 3 months. A map like this has many people across the nation worried about drought conditions.
And now to the ocean. The Atlantic seems to be a little bit warmer, but does that mean the waters will be toasty on your next trip to the shore? Here's meteorologist Ryan Mirando.
Things are heating up in the Atlantic Ocean right now with temperatures never really seen before. So this is what some of our temperatures look like over the open waters. Notice a lot of it has that orange and that red color. However, we have to dive deep past this to actually look at the anomaly, or how the temperatures compare to the average. When the color turns blue, that's the temperatures falling below average. When it turns more orange and red, that's the temperatures above average. So don't get, though, too excited for your next beach trip along the East Coast, as a lot of the open waters waters of the Atlantic actually are below average. However, really over the tropics and even areas south of Europe, well above average, in fact. And this is really affecting the large majority of the Atlantic, as when you average out the entirety of the ocean from the equator up to the North Atlantic is at 72.5 degrees. Now, the average temperature for this time of the year sits around 70.5, only around 2 degrees apart. However, temperatures have never been this warm before. That 2.5 degree difference is vast, as temperatures have never been this warm. And this is really the record for the warmest the Atlantic has ever been. And this could also affect hurricane season, as the warmer ocean temperatures normally favor higher tropical development.
Poor air quality has been making headlines across the country lately, from the Canadian wildfire smoke last week to elevated ozone layers. Texas boasts one of the most extensive air monitoring networks in the country. Austin meteorologist Chicago Windler takes a closer look.
The hazy, lazy days of summer are upon us, and typically that means more air quality concerns. So how is air pollution measured, and what can we do about it? I went to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to find out.
We are looking for 84 different pollutants, chemicals.
Senior chemist Craig Mitschke says samples from across the state are sent to TCEQ's air laboratory here in Austin for analysis.
This is a carbonyl cartridge that we collect air samples on.
From a tiny sample that fits in the palm of your hand to bigger canisters that are tested for VOCs, known as volatile organic compounds, data collection helps determine how much pollution is in our air.
Can you tell me what's going on with that one?
Particulate matter filters can detect pollutants like pollen, smoke, and in this case, Saharan dust from a previous year.
We respond to emergency events.
TCEQ can also monitor air quality on the go with its mobile monitoring vans. Each is equipped with spectrometers to measure air quality, plus an onboard weather station.
It collects wind speed, direction, and GPS coordinates.
Then there's ground level ozone,
Regularly considered smog.
TCEQ's Ryan Weiss says ozone action days are issued when conditions are favorable for ozone to form.
Hot summer days when there's no or light wind, to where it cannot be dispersed as easily in the air.
The main culprit?
Mobile emissions are the biggest source, which is vehicles, trucks, cars.
230 monitoring stations across Texas measure ozone levels, and if they reach orange on the air quality index, it can be unhealthy for those with sensitivities.
Especially when there's high pollution in the air. I'm an asthmatic, so I deal with that all the time, but yeah, it's definitely concerning.
Outdoor fitness trainer Brian Brown has some advice.
To be more patient with yourself and understanding of the environment. If you're able to avoid it, yes, I do recommend it.
And TCEQ recommends anything you can do to spend less time driving and idling will help keep emissions down.
Our TakeCareTexas.org website gives helpful tips, ways that they can do their part.
You can track the air quality where you live at airnow.gov. In Austin, I'm Chicago Windler for the National Weather Desk.
Well, hurricane season is underway, and while the Atlantic is quiet for now, it's never too early to prepare. South Carolina is no stranger to hurricanes, and their state agencies held a drill to simulate what lane reversals would look like if folks are ever ordered to leave areas in a hurry. No lane reversals were actually happened there, but during the 7-hour drill, but they did put their cross-agency plans and communication systems to the test. Well, here's something you don't see every day. A black bear joined swimmers at a Florida beach. The bear was spotted swimming in the Gulf of Mexico on Sunday, right alongside everyone else. After frolicking in the water, witnesses say the bear ran off into Destin's nearby sand dunes. In 2015, the Florida Wildlife Commission estimated about 120 bears lived in Florida's western panhandle. Who knew? Well, coming up on the National Desk, we'll find out how old religious buildings are being used to help build hurricane-resistant structures of the future. And we'll check in on the apple crop in northern Michigan. And a reminder now to check out our podcast. New episodes drop soon. Every Tuesday. Tomorrow's episode is a deep dive into the 1996 classic movie Twister. You can find out about the making of the movie and get a little scoop on an upcoming sequel. You can find Off the Radar wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. Most areas of the Northeast today will get into some sun after some morning clouds and fog in many zones. Temps will top out in the 70s and low 80s. We are tracking some rain, though. Notice some of that wet weather is moving into New York and southern New England tonight. That's about 8 p.m. That rain traverses up into northern New England by 8 a.m. on Tuesday. We'll get a solid break in the Northeast at some point during the day, Tuesday into Tuesday night. This next feature will bring some wet weather on Wednesday.
I'm meteorologist Jonathan Myers, and here's a look at the mid-Atlantic region. Perhaps a spot shower or two through the morning and midday hours up and down the 95 corridor, but it looks like it gets worse into the afternoon. Notice at 2:30, all the reds, the yellows, the oranges. Those could be some strong storms, maybe some gusty, damaging winds and some downpours from Philadelphia down to Baltimore, all the way east of Richmond to Norfolk, and then across the Delmarva and out into the evening hours with our latest cold front brings drier weather tomorrow. That's the scene here.
Watching the National Weather Desk.
Well, water kills more people in hurricanes than powerful winds, but they do cause significant damage to homes and other buildings. And we want to know why the structures that will hold up the best to hurricane force winds. And researchers are now looking to the past for a possible solution. As San Antonio meteorologist Joe DiCarlo shows us, the answer may lie in houses of worship.
Look at all the old churches. They'll have water damage, but they'll not have any structural damage.
This is something researchers from the UTSA Center for Cultural Sustainability wanted to investigate. William DuPont, an architecture professor at UTSA, led a planning study with the help of a grant related to Hurricane Harvey recovery funding. Their mission, to find out how to better be prepared for the next storm.
What can we do to mitigate the damage and the harm? What can we do to recover faster?
The researchers looked at 9 historic houses of worship near or along the Texas coast.
Historic houses of worship are frequently involved in disaster recovery. They're not first responders, but they get back in as soon as they can into their communities, and they do what they can to help out.
Researchers examined the structures and identified weaknesses that may prove vulnerable in a disaster.
Just to be aware of it means that in your disaster planning, you recognize that there is this vulnerability.
Researchers took the assessments of these buildings and created a toolkit to serve as a guide to rate a property's resilience, evaluate its risk of damage during a hurricane, then apply practical steps to improve the integrity of the structure and prepare ahead of a storm.
The tools are intended for architects and engineers elsewhere to utilize.
DuPont hopes it will be used across the country to better disaster-proof historical structures, and the importance of this cannot be understated.
You always wanted to preserve history. Once you tear down history, you can't never rebuild it.
Well, Michigan apples are one of the largest and most valuable fruit crops in the state, and last week, apple trees were in full bloom across northern Michigan. Meteorologist Heather Bricka looked at where the apple crop is now and how the warm weather is impacting farmers.
The apple trees on 2K Farms are past the bloom stage, and fruit is starting to set in their 30 different varieties of apples.
These are cider apples, cider specific. So these are biennial in nature,
So a lot of varieties, they have a lighter crop this year. But overall, we had ideal conditions for fruit set, 60, 70 degrees, low wind, no precipitation. So the bees had ample time to pollinate the trees.
High temperatures in the 80s and 90s last week could put a lot of stress on the trees.
The 90-degree weather, then you factor in it's not officially a drought, but the lack of precipitation really stresses the trees. So I don't know if that's good for us overall health of the tree and the crop.
Nikki Rothwell, fruit specialist at MSU Extension Office, said that this hot and dry weather could be a problem for farmers who don't have irrigation. On the other hand, the dry weather has been good for reducing the threat of fruit tree diseases.
The main disease or threat to apple trees is fire blight, and typically that's higher temperatures with precipitation.
Last year was a bumper crop for apples across Michigan, producing more than 29 million bushels, up from 15 million bushels in 2021. Farmers are expecting this year's crop to be smaller.
We did have a large crop last year, so you'd think we'd have at least a smaller crop. I think we will have one, but again, we had ideal conditions for fruit set.
Rothwell said that they are working hard to thin the apples, which is the next step as fruit starts to set.
Well, there's a ton of different weather folklore, but is it all weather folklore based in fact? Well, Lindsay Storrs breaks down one saying about red skies just to find out.
Red sky at night, sailor's delight, meaning that if you see a red sky in the morning, storms are approaching. But if you see a red sky at night, that means you've got calm weather on the way. So is there any truth to this folklore? Let's see. The sun rises in the east, and storms generally move from west to east, at least in the mid-latitudes where sailors did the majority of their sailing when this phrase was coined. When the sun is low in the sky, like at sunrise, the light has to pass through more atmosphere. As it moves through the atmosphere, the shorter wavelengths, like blue and indigo, are scattered out. This leaves the longer wavelengths, like reds and oranges, to reflect off any storm clouds to the west of the observer and gives a reddish look to the sky. Since the storm clouds are to the west, chances are high that they will move into the area later in the day, bringing stormy weather with them. The same thing happens at sunset. The sun's rays are scattered as they move through more of the atmosphere, leaving the red and orange colors to reflect off any clouds to the east of the observer. Since the clouds are to the east of the observer, they are most likely moving away from the observer, and the weather will be calm behind them. So this old weather folklore is mainly true. Of course, there's always exceptions to the rule.
Venus is fascinating, and a fascinating world similar in size and terrain to Earth, but also vastly different. And the future of Venus exploration is just around the corner with NASA's Da Vinci mission. Emily Gracie sat down recently with an expert to find out what makes traveling to this toxic planet so difficult.
Da Vinci is one of the 2 missions NASA selected to go to Venus, and we will be launching in June of 2029. We're going to head to Venus, and then in June of 2031, we are going to drop a probe into Venus's atmosphere, and it's about the diameter of a hula hoop made of titanium, and it's going to go down through the atmosphere, taking measurements of the atmospheric chemistry, of the composition, the pressure, what's going on in each layer of the atmosphere as it heads towards the surface. That will take about 1 hour. And then after we get below the cloud decks, we're going to take the first images of the ancient highlands of Venus from beneath the clouds.
How do you test your sapphire titanium probe? Do you have like a special box of Venus atmosphere laying around somewhere? Do you send it to the bottom of the ocean? How do you do that?
Well, we test in a lot of different ways. One place that we're testing is we actually do have an environment at NASA Goddard that is a Venus chamber. So it simulates the really corrosive and hot environment of Venus, and we stick things in it and find out what happens to them and how do we make them survive.
I was going to say, you guys are NASA. Of course you have a Venus atmosphere box you can throw stuff in.
I know, it's just down the hall. It's so
cool. Okay, so I have to ask, we're a weather show. Venus has an atmosphere. Does Venus have weather?
Absolutely. So it's got clouds, it's got winds, it's got different layers of the atmosphere. So it's, of course, really cool where it intersects with space. And then it's, 900 degrees Fahrenheit or so at the surface. But yes, we do have sulfuric acid clouds. We have winds that move those clouds around. And so actually one of our project scientists, she started out by studying extreme weather on Earth. And now she's getting ready to study, in great detail, extreme weather on Venus. And I think that is a whole different level of extreme that we're really excited to get into.
And time now for a short break, but first let's take in views of Midway Lake across Nebraska.
Good Monday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael taking a look at your weather story across the Midwest. We got an area of low pressure spinning over the Great Lakes, giving some rain there for the day today, but pretty decent weather for most of the Midwest. That does spin up more showers as we head into your Tuesday for the Great Lakes in the Ohio Valley. As we continue on into your Wednesday, still great across the plains, 80s, 90s, and still some lingering showers, though, early Wednesday across portions of Ohio and Kentucky before we dry out some.
Good Monday morning. I'm meteorologist Joe DiCarlo. Look at our forecast across the region. Well, it is going to be a warm day, if not very hot, as we head throughout mid-June, really cranking up the heat. Temperatures climbing into the mid to upper 90s. High humidity along the coast of Texas and Louisiana. Going to feel more like the triple digits. We are watching, though, for some strong and severe storms. North Texas around the DFW Metroplex this evening. We'll watch for all modes of severe weather. Mainly quiet overnight. More storms, though, around Arkansas.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West. We've got well above normal temperatures for the Pacific Northwest, with thunderstorms breaking out around the Rockies. Now, there's concern around California's Sierra Nevada that we're going to have some flash flooding. Also concerns as some very strong thunderstorms are breaking out in the eastern portion of Colorado. And that's the scene from here.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Lovely leaps of water. This serene scene captured at Fall Creek Falls, which is located within a Tennessee state park of the same name. Along with the waterfalls are smaller cascades, gorges, forests, and more. And this small school of hammerhead sharks gave these boaters an awesome view near Alabama's Robinson Island on Saturday.
For more content like this, like the National Weather Desk on Facebook.
Well, check this out. These newly hatched piping plover chicks that recently took their first steps on the beaches of Maine. They form nests in April, and then the fuzzy chicks usually hatch in late May and early June. These were spotted along Higgins Beach in Scarborough. Piping plovers are an endangered species in Maine, and here's a somber fact. Back in 1981, beach monitors only counted 10 nesting pairs of the birds in Maine. But thanks to conservation efforts, last year, volunteers counted 140 pairs with hundreds of chicks making it to maturity. Oh. Well, we'd love to share your weather content on the air. You can find us on all of your favorite social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search at National Weather Desk or National Weather Desk. We'll be right back. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Concerns over mounting drought over the summer. We're going to talk about that tomorrow on the National Weather Desk. We'll look at why some farmers say they are already feeling impacts. I'm meteorologist Brian Vandegraff. You make it a great day, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow.